Welcome to another episode of Wild and Well. Today, I am talking to functional health practitioner Kristen Blake about gut health, nutrient deficiencies, autoimmunity, and so much more. So, thank you, Kristen, for coming on the podcast. But before we get into all of that, can you tell us one thing that you've done today to take care of you?
Got my water filled up all the way to the top. I have to start my day with this on my desk because sometimes I will get really busy working and forget to drink water. So that's what I have to do every morning to make sure I'm starting off hydrated.
That's a great way to start. I think so many of us start off dehydrated and we wonder why we're exhausted a few hours
Yes,
in.
and have headaches and yeah.
Can you share a little bit about your own health journey and what led you into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I have what I think is a common story for a lot of people in my field, which is the wounded healer story, where there was something that happened, we were able to get well, and then wanted to share that mission and passion with the world. So I started feeling really sick when I was a teenager, rashes, fevers, passing out. Went to a million doctors. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. They just said, "Well, this is just you, and I guess you just get sick a lot, and it is what it is." And I had migraines and I had headaches and just one thing after another, and wasn't really given any answers. So I just kind of accepted it at that point. Got met my husband in college. We got married, started having kids, and my kids started having a lot of issues as well, reflux and asthma and allergies and eczema and all of these different things. And something in me said, no, I'm not going to accept it's how you are for them the same way I did for me. There's got to be something deeper to that. Around the same time, my husband was playing for the LA Lakers, and they had just hired a fantastic doctor who also was a nutritionist. And she started working with not just the players, but their families on helping us really overhaul our health for what food we had in our home, what we were feeding the guys for them to go out on the court and compete. And that really opened my eyes to more of a holistic health journey versus what I was doing before, which was if there's eczema, you go to the doctor, they put a cream on it, you put the cream on the eczema, you stop using the cream, the eczema comes back. So I was really enlightened by this whole holistic health world of using food. As medicine and going a little bit deeper. Started researching on my own. I got on PubMed with really limited idea of what I was doing, but I started researching and putting in my lab markers that I had found that doctor said, well, I don't know why you have this, but you just do. I started diving deeper. Come to find out, I had undiagnosed chronic Lyme disease, which then led to a whole host of other things that come along with undiagnosed Lyme disease, like POTS, EDS, and SIBO, and MCAS, and all these fun things. And once I knew what I had, I could go to a doctor that specialized in it, understood it, and began to get well. Once I started feeling well, my kids were feeling better, my husband was feeling better, everyone around me started noticing, saying, like, what are you doing? What's happening? Can you help me? And it's through that I found that I wanted to open a practice and start helping people. So I went back to school, became a certified health coach from Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Then I got a master's in science, master's of science in clinical nutrition and human performance, and then went on to do a lot of other smaller certifications as well, certifications in the autoimmune protocol, and GI mapping, which we'll probably talk about today with the gut, Dutch hormone testing, things like that.
Yeah, amazing. And the doctor that you first met with through your husband's work,
Mhm.
that was who was it? Dr. Kate.
Kate Shanahan.
Yeah, I remember hearing your story about that. And
Mhm.
I love her work. I've read her books and
Mhm.
I think what
It's
she's doing is so incredible. So I was
yeah,
just so jealous when I heard that you got to like work with her and learn from
yeah,
her. What a great
yeah.
mentor to have.
It's a really cool experience. Yeah, I'm so blessed to have had that.
Yeah. Wow. And now what does your work look like?
So now I couldn't keep up with the amount of people that needed help. So I have expanded my team and I have a registered dietitian that works for me. I have two health coaches. One specializes in gut health, one specializes in pediatrics. And I have a holistic RN. She's been an RN for 30 years and she's certified in functional medicine as well. So together, my whole team, we're able to reach and help a lot more people. We work mostly initially with the women in the family, and then they start feeling better, and then they start bringing in their husband and their kids and their parents. And so we find that while we initially were focused on women's health, we've now expanded really to treat and work with the whole family.
Yeah, amazing. It's funny how the mother is the one that's most motivated to make change for themselves and their family, and
Yeah.
then there's a flow on.
Yeah.
So, can we start with gut health? Give us a little bit of the basics. Like, why is gut health such a key foundation for our overall health? And why is it such a starting point for so many health practitioners?
Yes, it's so foundational to your overall health because this is where you are absorbing your nutrients and getting your food from. And if you are not absorbing all the nutrients that you're putting in, you could be eating the most healthy, amazing diet ever, but it's like you didn't eat it at all. You might as well just be eating styrofoam all day if you're not able to extract the nutrients from your food. And that all starts with gut health. You have to have enough hydrochloric acid to start to break down the food. And then that's going to trigger the pancreatic elastase and the lipase and the amylase. And we have this whole beautiful domino effect that our body does to break down food and extract nutrients. And if one thing is off, it can throw everything off. And if we have an overgrowth of bacteria in our small intestines, for example, that's going to impair our ability to absorb nutrients, which most of them are absorbed in the small intestines. And again, if you're not absorbing those nutrients, then nothing else is going to work right. Your thyroid won't function properly. Your metabolism isn't going to work right. You can become deficient in vitamin B and D and iron. If you have iron deficiency, then now you're really tired all the time and you could develop iron deficiency anemia. So everything starts in the gut. It's more than just you are what you eat. Everyone's heard that before. I think it's you are what you absorb and you break down because we have to get that out of the food. And that's also where so much of our neurotransmitters are made and so much of our immune system lies. And if we have disruptions and issues in our gut, then we might have issues with our immune system. Studies showed that 100% of people with autoimmune disease have high intestinal permeability or leaky gut. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone with leaky gut is going to have autoimmune disease. There has to be a genetic predisposition and a trigger and things like that. But it just goes to show how that's such an important part of the overall picture. We can't have leaky gut and interacting with the immune system inappropriately, which then can lead to immune dysfunction.
And can you tell us what leaky gut is for somebody who's listening who's maybe heard this term? I imagine most people have heard it, but there's not necessarily this full understanding of what that is.
Yeah, so I want you to picture fishnet stockings or regular pantyhose. So your gut should be like regular pantyhose where it's somewhat permeable. You could pour a glass of water through it, but if you put a small pebble, that's not going to come through versus fishnet stockings with these big openings, things can kind of fly through there. So leaky gut or intestinal permeability is like having fishnet stockings when we're supposed to have regular sealed up pantyhose. And that's the way the body is supposed to work, where we're able to, again, absorb the nutrients, but it goes through the proper channels where the immune system says, this is friend, not foe. We want to absorb this. We want this to come in. And it has this whole checks and balances that it needs to go through versus these big gaping holes where things are just kind of flying through. That bypasses the appropriate checks and balances. And then the immune system can start to freak out and we can have friendly fire where it's trying to attack something. And then we've got inflammation in the gut. That can lead to a whole host of other issues and, IBS and things like that. But leaky gut really is just openings where there should be not large openings, but rather a well-controlled amount of permeability.
Do you think that the average person in like the modern day society can just assume they have some level of leaky gut?
Yes. It's so rare that we have someone that we have tested and we use zonulin and they don't have leaky gut. Pretty much everyone does. It's a matter of how leaky is it. The people that come in that are really clean eaters and they're very conscious about their health and they're trying to do the right thing, they have less permeability, but we still even find a small degree in even them. Also, of course, that's the population that's coming to work with us is people that have problems. So there is that caveat to it. But I will say that even the quote unquote healthiest people, when we look at their gut for more answers, when maybe we've tried everything else and we didn't suspect their gut because they don't have GI symptoms and they eat really well and haven't taken antibiotics in years and all of these red flags that might prompt us to test, we've maybe pushed out testing thinking you're probably fine. We go in and look and they still have some intestinal permeability as well.
And what do we do? I know like that's a really big question, but what can we do? What are some starting points to help fix leaky gut?
So it is very complex, but I will break it down into two things. One is we need to remove what's making it so permeable. And then two is going in and healing it up. So removing what's permeable, that's the tricky part because you might not know what that is. Some people have a lot of candida. Candida can sort of poke holes in the gut lining by putting out the hyphae that fungus like to do when they grow. So if you've got a candida overgrowth, you're going to need to get rid of that first. Or if you have parasites, or maybe you recently took antibiotics and that wiped out all the good bacteria, and then a bunch of bad came in and they're creating some inflammation, which is creating some intestinal permeability. So, whatever that is, you got to take out what the problem is. Oh, and food allergies and sensitivities, that can be another thing that can kind of keep things not very happy in there and inflamed and permeable. So, some people know what their food sensitivities are and some don't. You can go through an inventory for yourself and see if you have diarrhea every time you eat gluten, maybe don't eat gluten for a while and see if we can remove the thing that's causing the problem and heal things up. So, number one, we have to remove the problem. And then number two, with healing. So, that again is going to look different for everyone. Some simple things that everyone can do at home is drink real homemade bone broth. So, it needs to be kind of gelatinous when it's sitting. On the counter. So if it's pure liquid, that's not going to have as much of all the good stuff, chondroitin and glucosamine and things like that we want. So really good quality bone broth that you can make by yourself. And glutamine is also great for healing the gut. Sometimes you have to use pretty high doses, but that's something you could start if it's appropriate for you and your doctor's okayed that. Um, Eating yogurt can be helpful if you don't know what good or bad bacteria you have. If you're eating a high quality yogurt, not full of sugar, but a good high quality yogurt that has good bacteria in it, that can be helpful for just that overall healthier microbiome. Our preferred way is we test, we see exactly what's in the way that we need to get out of the way, and we see exactly how leaky it is and what we need to do to fix it. But for kind of the general public, you can see what foods and what things are making your body feel worse, stop with those, and then start adding in bone broth and healthy healing foods.
Yeah, that seems like a really good starting place, but I do agree that sometimes testing can help you just go a lot faster through the processes. You're not guessing and maybe taking probiotics that like aren't necessary for you. You can just go for what you really need.
Yep, exactly. It's like the easy button. You get there so much faster if you have access to the testing to do that, and we know exactly what's wrong, and we can fix it quickly and easily versus try this probiotic up. Maybe it worked. Try this one. Maybe that will work. And so sometimes people spin their wheels for a while before they give up, and they're like, all right, let's just test and see what's in there.
Yeah, I imagine most people are like that because we do just want to experiment with things at home, but then eventually you reach a point where you just want to fix things.
Yeah.
So if we think about nutrient deficiencies, you're talking about how we are what we absorb, and I absolutely agree with that as well. We are what we eat, but also what we absorb. And if it is just going through us, we're probably not absorbing much, and that's going to have some negative consequences. Why do you see that so many people are struggling with nutrient deficiencies? Is leaky gut the main thing, or are there other factors that are causing this?
I see three main factors. One is people often aren't fueling themselves enough. They tend to undereat, especially busy moms. When I ask them, what did you eat today? They're like, well, I had a bar running out the door in the morning to take the kids to school. And then for lunch, I ate a couple of my toddler's leftover chicken nuggets. And then for dinner, we were out, we were busy, we just grabbed something while we were out. So they're not a lot of them are not eating enough and they're not eating nutrient dense foods. Foods that grab you can grab and go are typically not going to be nutrient dense, where fruits, veggies, those are going to be much more nutrient dense. So number one would be not eating enough or the right foods. And then number two would be that intestinal permeability or dysbiosis or inflammation or whatever's going on in the gut that is disrupting that absorption process. And then the third is we do have a lot of deficiencies in our soil in the US. There's been monocrop farming, there's been over farming. It's really stripped a lot out of the soil. So we see a lot of mineral imbalances specifically due to that. If there's was a study done and compared the mineral balances in the late 1990s to I think it was maybe like 1940s or something. They had data on that and they were tracking it every decade. And it was so sad to see how much it's declined. Magnesium has declined in the soil and chromium. And zinc and all the things. So part of it is our food supply, and then part we're not absorbing it, and part we're not eating it. So it's people are really set up for disaster when it comes to nutrient deficiencies these days. And I'm a big believer in food first, and food is medicine. But there's times where if you're in a really deep hole, we need to supplement to dig you out of the hole, and then you can stay out of the hole with food after that. And that's another place where you don't know unless you're testing, but if you're testing and your vitamin D levels are really low, especially if you're in a northern latitude and there's not as much sun and things like that, you might need to supplement with vitamin D to get you out of that hole and up to where it needs to be. Iron, B vitamins, things like that, the same.
And what are some of the main nutrient deficiencies that you see, especially in women in your practice, in these moms that are busy and not eating properly? What are the main ones that you're seeing?
Ferritin is really low in a lot of women. They are losing, there's a lot of hormone imbalances going on out there. So they're having really heavy periods. They're losing a lot of blood. That's lowering their iron stores. Their ferritin's bottomed out. So that's a big one. And then vitamin D, I see that low really frequently. I don't think people are paying enough attention to it. I think it should be looked at more regularly. And it's just not for whatever reason. And that tends to be, I mean, we're all busy and indoors often, so we're not always getting as much sunlight. And then there's genes that impact how well you can even absorb and maintain your vitamin D levels anyway. So even if you are outside, you can still have the gene. And then B vitamins is another one. So I see a lot of low B vitamins, and people are really tired and they're dragging. And we give them a nice B complex, and they perk right back up and feel a lot better. And then we need to figure out, why was it low? Are you not eating enough, folate? Do you need more leafy greens in your life? Or is it absorption, or what is it? But again, we'll kind of help dig them out for now and then figure out how can we do this going forward with food.
And do you guys test for quite a few different nutrients? Because some nutrients are really easy to test where you can do quick blood work, but other ones can be quite tricky.
Yeah, we always test for vitamin D. We always do a full iron panel. We look at iron and ferritin and TBIC, iron sat. I want to see the full picture. If somebody just says they're iron, but we don't know their ferritin, well, we don't know, is this just circulating or going into the storage forms? So those are easy to test for vitamin D and iron. And then, like you said, some of the other ones can be a little bit trickier. When we're doing a Dutch hormone test, which we like to do on a lot of women that have hormonal imbalances, it does give us B6 and B12 on there, which is great, super helpful. The best way to test B12 is methylmalonic acid. That's how the Dutch test is doing it. So that's great. But doing a serum methylmalonic acid can be 50, $60 depending on how you're testing it, which for one marker is kind of a lot. But for example, vitamin D when we run it is 29. So like half the price. So we don't always do an MMA. Sometimes we'll just do a serum B12, knowing it's not perfect, but it is a proxy where we can at least kind of see where it's at. Now, if somebody is we really suspect a lot of nutrient deficiencies, or their budget is a little bit bigger, then we'll do a micronutrient panel. There's two different labs that I use for that, and they do a good job of running everything. It is pages and pages and pages of all of the nutrients, ranging from the B vitamins all the way down to little things like chromium and zinc and things like that.
Oh, that's amazing. And with zinc, that's one that tends to be quite low. Are you seeing that in your practice as well?
Mm. Yeah, and well, or the other way. So some people are low in zinc, but then other people are have heard that zinc is going to be helpful for cold and flu season, and they don't want to get sick a lot. So they're taking buckets of zinc, too much zinc. So what they taught us in grad school was you should have no more than 45 milligrams of zinc for no more than 4 months. Otherwise, you can create a copper deficiency. So minerals compete for binding sites, and zinc and copper, they're going to compete for binding sites. So some people are just pounding zinc, going, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sick. And they're taking 50 milligrams a day for 6 months straight. And then they pushed all the copper out, and then they have a copper deficiency. And copper is important for immune function as well, especially for controlling fungal overgrowths, viruses. And so some people have created the flip-flop of that, where they have high zinc and low copper. So whenever we're looking at zinc, we look at copper as well, because we want to know the full picture again and the balance. So we're not just pushing one up and the other down. We want it to be balanced.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point there that there's so much access to information and there's so much access to vitamins and minerals that people can just self-prescribe, even if they're not sure if they need it or how much to take. But it is really important to work with somebody like yourself who can test and monitor what's going on.
Yeah, I see a lot of people messing themselves up when they come to me. Like you said, there's great information out there, and it's hard, and I try really hard on my Instagram page to give enough information to empower you to know that these things are important without going over into the, hey, just DIY self-prescribe area, because I think that can be really scary and people can mess themselves up. So I try to provide information without, you won't find on my page anywhere that says take this many milligrams of this and this many of that, because I don't think that people should be doing that. I think they should be working with somebody and it should be controlled and it should be looked at and tested, things like that. I've had people coming to me that have said, I know I have high cortisol because so and so influencer said these symptoms are high cortisol, so I've been taking phosphatidylserine to lower it. And I'm like, have you ever tested? And they're like, no. And then we test them, and their cortisol's completely gone, totally flatlined, and they feel awful because cortisol, we do need some. It gets you up, it gets you up and going. And if that's flatlined, not only are you going to feel terrible, but it also corresponds to higher symptom severity for autoimmune disease. So if you have autoimmune disease and then you've bottomed out your cortisol, you're going to feel exponentially worse and amplify those symptoms that you have. So again, I don't love the like, I saw this online, so I took this kind of a thing because it goes wrong so very often.
Yeah, and different symptoms can be indicative of a number of different issues. It's not just cortisol issues in that case, right? It can be something else. And
Mhm.
cortisol is definitely having its moment right now that
Yes.
everybody is attacking it. But yeah, like you say, it is so important as well. It just has to be in the right amount. So speaking of hormones, what do you want women listening to know about their hormones?
Estrogen is also like cortisol, where it's Goldilocks, and we don't want it too high and we don't want it too low. So that's something that I hope people hear and take away from this because I feel like that's having a moment now as well. And people are going, oh, if you have heavy periods or PMS or cramping, you should take DIM, diindomethane, to lower your estrogen. Well, we don't want you to have no estrogen. Estrogen actually helps protect your bone health. It helps prevent osteoporosis and osteopenia. It's cardiovascularly protective. We don't want no estrogen. You're going to end up with hot flashes and feeling terrible. So before you run out and you grab some DIM because your periods are heavy, monitor your estrogen. Do a simple blood test or urine test or whatever. There's so many different ways that you can go about testing that, but estrogen is very much a Goldilocks hormone as well. And if I have it my way, I would say do either a Dutch or a vibrant hormone zoomer where we get to see the pathways of the estrogen. So we've got estrogen, and it breaks down to E1, E2, E3, and then that goes down three different pathways: 2OH, 4OH, 16OH. 4OH is correlated to an increased risk of breast cancer. 16OH is correlated to toxins. It's very proliferative. It tends to make heavy periods worse. It tends to grow fibroids. It tends to make endometriosis worse. 2OH is protective against breast cancer. So if we run this whole panel, then we can see not only is your estrogen too high, too low, or in a good amount, but where is it going? Is it going down a dangerous pathway? If so, let's swing that over to the more protective pathway to help reduce that breast cancer risk. And how you do that depends on why it's out of balance in the first place. So another place where we don't just say, oh, it's high, take DIM. We want to see, is it high because testosterone is over aromatizing to estrogen? Or is it high because your COMT methylation, which is like the drain in the bottom of the bathtub, is clogged up? And so then it's kind of all backing up everywhere. So if we get to see everything, then we can really go about it in the right way. Now, I know not everybody is going to be going out and doing this test. So the main thing that I want people to know is that your hormones are more than just this should be high, this should be low. Everything has an appropriate balance. They balance each other. The pathways are important. So looking at it more holistically is going to give you a much better outcome versus maybe doing more harm than good. I see a lot of people take DIM and then they feel worse because they've changed their estrogen and now they're having hot flashes.
And is there a certain time or like certain symptoms that you'd recommend that somebody does explore their hormones a bit more and maybe do a Dutch test? Or is it
Yeah.
just something you recommend that we all should do every couple of years?
I would love for everyone to do it every couple of years because I think it's such an informative and great test. But symptom wise, if you have any perimenopause or menopause symptoms, doctors will often say, oh, there's nothing you can do about it. It just is what it is. Deal with it. Have your hot flashes. Go home. That's not true. There are things you can do about it. And when you get the data and you see what's going on, you can balance things more appropriately. And yes, your ovaries might be sputtering out of their estrogen levels and it is going to be dropping, and that is in the realm of normal and natural. And you can't just supplement your way out of your ovaries, giving up because that's what they're supposed to do. But maybe it's time for HRT replacement and starting at a really low level to kind of even things out. So another thing I want people to hear is don't accept that there's nothing you can do. I hear that a lot, and people then come to work with me because they're like, that can't be right. I've heard you say that there's things we can do, and there is. So if you're going through perimenopause or menopause, that could be a really good time to do some strategic testing and see what is in the realm of being able to bump it up versus what needs to be replaced. And then again, that one test also tells us your cortisol, your B6, your B12. So we're really getting a nice big picture. And then heavy periods would be another thing that I would say that would be a great test to do to see why are they heavy? Is it that high 16-OH? And if so, we can work on that. You don't have to just deal with really heavy, really painful periods all of the time. Sleep issues and mood issues also would be really big key symptoms that I'd say doing a comprehensive hormone evaluation could be helpful, because both of those can be helped by maybe increasing progesterone if that is low. If it's not low, it's not really going to help you to bump it up higher. So again, seeing where that's at, balancing the estrogen and the progesterone. Our estrogen and progesterone balance each other, and then our cortisol and our melatonin are like a seesaw. So this one test gives us a good look at all of these different balances and seesaws so we can put everything back to where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it sounds like a great test. I've heard about it. I've never actually done it myself. It's one that I keep meaning to do, but I've just heard such great things about it. So thank you for explaining that. If we look at autoimmunity, because this is something that you work quite a bit with, like you've worked with people with Hashimoto's and Crohn's and a number of other autoimmune issues. What's your root cause approach for these? If you could just like summarize it. I know like no, you don't need to go into every detail because we'd be here for probably days, but what does it look like?
There's three things when we have autoimmune disease. We have a genetic predisposition, and that you can't change. You can influence your genes through epigenetics, which is the environment around the genes, and we can kind of switch some things on and off, but you're not going to change your genetics. So for the most part, that is what it is. We want some natural kind of support and foundations in place, good sleep, good nutrition, things like that are going to help from an epigenetic standpoint. But we have genetics, and then we have intestinal permeability, and then we have a trigger. So that middle one, that intestinal permeability, that's something we can do something about. We can do a stool test and see what's in the way that needs to come out, and then how much permeability do we have, and how are we going to address that? And the way we address that depends on the whole test. We look at it very holistically. So it's not, we don't just give everyone glutamine and wave a magic wand. If they also have H. pylori, we're going to use aloe because aloe is helpful for H. pylori and for intestinal permeability. And so we really look at the whole test to figure out how are we going to address that intestinal permeability, what needs to be removed. And then we have the trigger. And so that's a deep rabbit hole that sometimes we have to go down. Sometimes it's more obvious. We now have a lot of things coming out in kind of the media talking about viruses contributing to autoimmune disease. And this is something that like the functional medicine world has known about absolutely forever, but it's kind of coming to the forefront more now in the media, where we know that Epstein-Barr virus is correlated to MS, also to lupus, but more strongly to MS. We know that COVID has triggered a lot of autoimmune issues for people, and that's part of long COVID is it just COVID or did it wake up autoimmune? So diving into the what is the trigger, and sometimes we can figure that out through a really detailed health history where we sit down and we talk through when did this start for you, and we can figure it out and go, oh, it was when you moved into this new house and we test the house and it's full of mold. Mold was the trigger that then made their immune system go wonky. And then we help them figure out, what to do about that. Sometimes it's toxins. I have a kiddo that I'm working with right now. He's the case study is on my Instagram, and there's a picture. He has a rash on his face. He had it for about a year. He saw 10 different doctors, and they all were like, I don't know. They tried different creams and doxycycline and all different things. Nobody could figure it out. And I ran some deeper labs and saw it appears to be autoimmune. We had some autoimmune markers come up. We have very, very leaky gut come up. So we're working on that. We had tons of food allergies. So we're working through that to kind of calm down the immune system. And he lives near a golf course and a lot of HOAs that are using a lot of chemicals on all the things. And there was chemicals in his water, and we tested the water, and so we found a lot on a toxin panel for him. So we started removing the toxins and using binders and healing the leaky gut and removing the food allergies, and it was a lot of work that kiddo and mom had to do. But within 2 weeks his rash disappeared. 2 weeks. So this was a year-long rash with 10 doctors that said, I don't know. And within 2 weeks of really diving in, once we found that root cause was chemicals and leaky gut and food allergies, and we started addressing that, it went away. Now he still has more work to do because an autoimmune process, you can't, just say poof and it goes away. So we're still working on things on a deeper level, but the rash is gone. And that's a sign that, okay, we figured it out. We found the root cause and we're moving in the right direction. So again, that root cause is where it gets a little tricky finding what was it. Sometimes it can even be trauma and stress related. Death in the family can then trigger an autoimmune flare. Postpartum is another time where some women will maybe have beginning autoimmune, but they're not quite aware of it yet. And then they feel great when they're pregnant. This is a big red flag when women say, I felt the best I ever did when I was pregnant. And then after I crashed and I felt terrible, I'm like, okay, let's run some autoimmune tests on you then. And that hormone like rise and fall, that really sharp hormonal change, that can be a trigger for autoimmune disease. And then the autoimmune protocol is another thing that we'll utilize with everyone. And this is a diet and lifestyle based modification program. And it's going to look a little bit different for everyone, but on the whole, we're going to be removing things that can flare immune systems. So, elderberry, a lot of people are taking that because they're like, I don't want to get sick. If you have autoimmune disease, elderberry cranks up your immune system, which is great if you're trying to fight off a cold. But if you have autoimmune and your body's attacking you don't want to turn that up. So we're going to remove maybe supplements that people are taking that they shouldn't, and then foods. There's a very large variety of foods that can kind of exacerbate immune function. Gluten is a great one. And then nightshades is another one that we find very, very often we need to remove with rheumatoid arthritis. And this has been well documented and well studied that nightshades flare rheumatoid arthritis. And so that would be something we'd remove. A lot of people think they've removed it, and then the dietitian gets in there and she's like, nope, you didn't. Did you know this was a nightshade or this? And so there's a lot of education that comes through that. And then the lifestyle portion, we want people to calm down, slow down. This can be really hard for people, but we want them to get better sleep, scale their workouts back. If they're doing CrossFit 6 times a week, we're going to ask them to switch that to walking and yoga 6 times a week. Doesn't have to be forever, but we just need to calm everything down. The body is confused, everything's ramped up, and we want to calm that down. So we'll have them scale back on that and just be really kind to their bodies. Give it good, nourishing food. Don't give it food that's going to make it angry. Give it lots of sleep. Don't push it to the brink when you're working out, and really increase that nutrient density. There's a portion of nutrients that are really important for immune function that we really want to try to push up. And most people aren't eating them. No one's out there eating liver and organ meat. So we give tips and strategies on how to try to sneak it in if they're willing, or if they're not, we might again supplement with it to dig them out of that hole, and try to kind of get things rebalanced from that standpoint.
Yeah, with the organ meats, I just use a powder and I sprinkle it into various meals that I make. So then nobody
Perfect.
knows that they're even eating it. And you're only getting small amounts. Like it wouldn't be enough to really bump it up. But if you're doing that often enough, I figure it helps.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's the problem with gluten and Hashimoto's as well, is molecular mimicry. The gluten molecule looks a lot like a thyroid molecule. So every time someone with Hashis is consuming gluten, the body is attacking the gluten and it's attacking the thyroid. So every food has a little bit of a different reason why it's a problem and why we remove it. Like tomatoes, which those are a nightshade, but a side problem with tomatoes is that they have saponins in them. And the saponins are an immune increaser, kind of like an elderberry. Saponins are actually used in vaccines because is part of getting the body to go, hey, hey, pay attention to this and do something about this right now. That's how vaccines work, is we introduce something into the body and say, hey, we want you to pay attention to this. We want you to make antibodies to this so that if you see it again, you're good to go with it. Well, we don't want to be doing that with when somebody has an autoimmune disease. And again, things are turned up. We don't want to turn it up more, going, hey, hey, pay attention to everything, attack everything. So saponins can kind of exacerbate immune responses. And then the gluten goes with Hashis, and then the nightshades go with RA. So we have this whole big list of things that we remove. On there also is the top 7 allergies, which those are ones that you'll see labeled on food. You'll see if a food contains gluten or dairy or peanuts or tree nuts or shellfish, and that's going to have to be on a label. It's legally required. So those ones we also temporarily remove as well because they're just so likely to make an immune system upset and have some type of a response. That's why they're common allergens. So we remove those as well. And then there's also the difference between allergies and sensitivities. So an allergy is going to be an IgE response, and a sensitivity is going to be an IgG response. IgE responses are typically faster. You can kind of feel those right away. Sometimes they're anaphylactic, but they can be non-anaphylactic and still present. And then IgG is where it can take a few days for you to feel the reaction to it. That's why trying to figure out what foods are causing you headaches or migraines or joint pain or exacerbating your immune system can be really, really hard, because think of how many different foods you eat over the course of 5 days. And then trying to figure out which one did it feels impossible. So that's why we like to go in with a registered dietitian and do a temporary elimination diet, removing the things that are just most likely to cause problems. And then people will find a new baseline. So then they start to feel better. I'm like, oh, my joint pain is gone. My headaches are gone. I don't feel as puffy anymore. My brain fog is gone. Whatever that looks like for them, we find that new baseline. And then again, guided with a registered dietitian, we do food reintroductions where they are putting the food back in one every 5 days and seeing, oh, did this flare anything or not? And we do a modified version of this with people. We don't have the original AIP was very restrictive. And we found we still get results with a modified. So we typically will do a more modified version. With kids, we try to either not do it at all or do like a super, super duper modified version, because I don't like taking food from kids. We want them to not fear food and have nutrient density. So we have to be really careful with that, and depending on the age and the parents' advice, and we all work together to figure that out. But sometimes we'll take away dairy and all of a sudden their eczema is gone, and that's all we had to do was that one food group. And then they have that information, and now that's a choice that the family can make of, okay, dairy makes the eczema worse. Now you can choose what you want to do with that information, but at least you know, instead of it being like random and we don't know what's causing the eczema and we keep putting creams on it and it won't go away. Knowledge is power, and then you can figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah, I think there's still a gap in knowledge that a lot of people don't make that connection between what we eat and our gut and symptoms on our skin, for instance, like eczema or the arthritis in our
Acne.
joints, right?
Mhm,
So I think it's so
mhm.
important that you're doing this work and you're talking about this so people just start to make that understanding and then they can actually solve the problem as well.
And the good part about food sensitivities specifically, and with AIP, with the food removals and the reintroductions, is that if we've done a good job healing your gut up and getting that back to a stocking instead of a chain link fence or fishnet stocking, you should be able to have most, if not all, of the foods back. So it's not a forever thing. So I think that's really important to remember too, is when we're talking about elimination diets and taking foods away, it sounds really ominous and scary. But if you do it right and you do it systematically and step by step, and you have gut healing in there, what you find at the end of the day is, again, knowledge that you can use for power for yourself, but it shouldn't be, well, all I eat is lettuce now. It should be to where you get most of the foods back. And for myself, gluten, I've tried. I can't reintroduce it. Gluten is a hard no for me. I had positive ANA markers, which anti-nuclear antibodies, which is a sign of autoimmune disease back in the day when I was sick all the time before I figured all this out. And I did the AIP diet, and for a year, I couldn't have any grains at all. No rice. Every time I tried to put them in, I'd get a massive migraine and couldn't get out of bed. So I stayed away from grains. And then finally, I'd retry them like every 3 months. And then finally, after a year, I could have grains again. I'm like, well, that's great. So now I can have rice and oats and quinoa. But gluten is a no. And so I was able to find out what works for me and my body. And then now I can have a choice on how I want to feel that day.
Yeah, that knowledge is so useful, isn't it? And your own self-knowledge of what works
Hmm.
for you. But we
Yeah.
are all different. You talk about mast cell activation, and this is something that I think more people need to know about. Can you explain a little bit about what mast cell activation is and why this can be so problematic for people?
Yeah, that's really having a moment on social media now too, isn't it? So, I have a history of it, so I am intimately aware of mast cell activation syndrome and how that all works. I was able to resolve mine by kind of resolving my root cause issue. I like to explain it as a spectrum. So we have the very severe manifestation of it, mast cell activation disease, that is very deadly, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's genetic and very deadly and scary. And then we have the syndrome, which is like everything in between, where that can be very severe as well. I have a client that has had been in and out of the ER before she came to us 6 times in a year, coded at one point because her MCAS was so severe and it was undiagnosed initially and they didn't know what was going on. So that's a very severe manifestation. She has to carry an EpiPen. And then all the way over to a lesser severe manifestation is somebody that's just constantly plagued by symptoms everywhere. And that's the problem with mast cells is that they are everywhere in your whole body. So you're going to think of them like a balloon and they have inside of them histamine and prostaglandins and leukotrienes. And when they explode, their contents come out. And we only want them to explode in very specific situations in a very controlled fashion. It's kind of like if you sprain your ankle, yes, you want some swelling to go to that area and bring those healing factors, but you don't want it to stay swollen for like a year or every time you take a step, it swells up. We want things in our body to act in a controlled way. And mast cell activation syndrome means they're just overactive. They're just, these balloons are exploding all over the place all the time, and they can't figure out how to stop. And so you're getting this dump of contents. And so the symptoms can look very different depending on where they are when they're doing what they're doing. People tend to have symptom clusters, but it can be in your brain where you're having either brain fog, anxiety, even psychosis, insomnia, depression, can be in your gut where you're having diarrhea, cramping, pain, urgency, constipation, heart palpitations. It can be on your skin. You can have urticaria, you can have eczema, you can have rashes, you can have hives. So it really can be all over the place, which is what makes it really difficult to diagnose. And the gold standard for diagnosis is an elevated tryptase, which is like catching lightning in a bottle, because your tryptase is only going to be elevated in an active mast cell flare. And so, how often are you having an active mast cell flare when you happen to have a phlebotomy appointment at LabCorp? Probably not that often. So, it can be really hard to catch that elevated tryptase. And doctors will write a script for people that say, get your blood drawn during a flare, but then they might not be able to actually do that. Um, you can kind of guess at it if you have really high histamine levels. I like to look at whole blood histamine, but serum histamine can work as well. Really high eosinophils constantly can be kind of a sign that you've got an allergic type thing going on with too much histamine. You can do prostaglandins. So there's other ways you can look at it, but unfortunately, the gold standard is really hard to get that diagnosis. But if somebody does have that or suspects they have it, it is important to get that evaluated and figure that out because you might need to be carrying an EpiPen if this does escalate into an anaphylactic type situation. Some over the counter treatments are things like Zyrtec and Pepcid. So we pair an H1 and an H2 blocker together. Pharmaceutical interventions are going to be things like cromolyn, which I'm a big fan of, ketotifen, sometimes LDN is used, and then there's some newer research coming out on like Dupixent and Xolair injections and things like that. But then what we do in my practice is to kind of support the underlying factors and triggers that make the mast cells more unstable. So while they're seeking any appropriate medical treatment, we can be working on, do you have a lot of mold in your environment? That can trigger mast cells. Do you have a lot of really high EMFs? Are you sleeping right next to your Wi-Fi router? EMFs can actually make mast cells more unstable. Maybe you're doing both. You're in a moldy apartment sleeping next to your router, and that's creating a lot of problems there. Trauma, stress, COVID triggered a lot of mast cell issues for people. So by going back in and really supporting the immune system, working through whatever the body is doing with its long COVID situation. Fixing that is then going to help stabilize mast cells more. We find a lot of gut issues with long COVID people and then also with mast cell people. So again, working on the gut, working on that intestinal permeability so that the body's not as easily confused and exploding its balloons all over the place with that mast cell activation syndrome.
So people who have histamine issues, is this something that they should be looking into? Because that can be something separate or it can be indicative of mast cell activation. Is that correct?
Yes, yep, can be completely separate. It could, if you have histamine issues, maybe you just have really bad seasonal allergies, and maybe you should look into sublingual immunotherapy or immunotherapy shots or something like that. Or if you're, allergic to cats, maybe you don't have a cat. So there's histamine, and then there's mast cells that can be separate or they can be the same. And I think it's worth looking into. I think that people should know it's going to be hard to get a diagnosis, so you might not get there, but it's worth having that conversation with your doctor, looking into that, trying to rule that in or out. When clients come to us and they're not sure, like I said, we'll kind of look at it from the side angle. We'll look at a histamine. We'll try to do a tryptase sometimes. And even if they're not in a flare, if it's at that high end, that might be indicative. And then we will often, again, in addition to figuring out what might be triggering it and working on the root, sometimes we'll add in some gentle mast cell stabilizers and supplements when appropriate and see if that helps to lessen things and get a handle on things. There's certain things, and MCAS kind of falls under that, where you might not always get the diagnosis. And so you might need to treat as though you have it. And if you get better, great. That was kind of your diagnosis there. And some doctors are more willing to do that than others. I've had doctors that are fine with writing prescriptions for cromolyn and ketotifen while we're working on gut nutrition and health. And even if they don't have that diagnosis, and then if everything goes away, then great, we were on the right track. I've had others that say no, unless you have an elevated tryptase. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to just do some over the counter then maybe and some supplements while we're working on this to see if we can figure it out from that aspect as well. But I do think it's worth looking into because if you do have it, it can be dangerous and you would need an EpiPen, but just know that you may or may not get that final diagnosis.
And how do you find, like, through all the work that you've done on yourself, do you feel like this is something that you still have to monitor, or do you feel like you're well past it?
I'd say I am well past all like chronic disease and illness and things like that. The only thing I have to watch for myself is I burn the candle at both ends, push myself too hard, and I can kind of easily get depleted. And then I go, oh, okay, I need to work less and sleep more and things like that. But I haven't ever gone back into that dark hole that I was in where I was basically bedridden and could barely function. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm all for a long time I was kind of looking over my shoulder, like, is it gonna come back? And I retested my ANA markers probably 6 times in the past 10 years, and it's still negative every time because I keep waiting. Is it gonna come back? But it doesn't. So I think I'm firmly in the clear when it comes to autoimmune disease and Lyme. I can kind of come back up if you have other viruses on board and living in mold and but I know how to manage those things and I built my house to make sure it didn't have mold and I try to nourish myself and stay well rested and things like that. So all of that has tended to be able to keep it at bay. So I feel really good, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like it's amazing that you like for yourself, but it's just a testament to the work that you do, right? That if you do these things and you keep doing them, you can actually really change your health situation.
Yeah, yep, definitely. And I think that's so important for people that are in a place where they feel terrible to remember is that yes, it's some hard work initially, but it's so worth it when you get to the other side. And I don't have to do all the really hard work that I did back in the day. I mean, I was doing sauna and IVs and I did a lot to get well. I don't have to do that anymore. I can just maintain it with these more basic foundational principles of good food, good sleep, not pushing myself too hard and kind of easy things like that. So you kind of put in the hard work initially to get over the hump, and then you get to just reap the rewards of it from there on out.
And it's hard work either way. Like if you just think about that client that you're talking about, that little boy, it's hard work for that kid to have that autoimmune issue and have that rash, and for the mother to be going to all these appointments, trying all these different things, researching it. Or you make all the changes to your lifestyle and diet and you address the root cause. And that's hard work too. But I always think about it's you have to choose your heart. Which heart do you want? Life is hard, but you can have a heart that makes life better. You can have a heart that sends you in the other direction.
Yeah, I love that. I say that a lot too. Choose your hard. I love it.
Was there anything that you were wanting to talk about here or you wanted me to ask that we didn't talk about?
No, this was so fun. I've really enjoyed getting to talk about all of these different topics, and hopefully, your listeners will enjoy listening to all the different things too. But this was great.
And can you let people know a little bit about how they can work with you and where they can find you online, assuming like we'll have everything in the show notes, but just assuming that they don't look at those, if you can just list them off here as well.
Yeah, my Instagram is a great place to get started, which is Kristen Blake Wellness. And I'm very active on there, posting a lot, doing a lot of stories, always in my DM. So I'm always happy to answer any questions that people have about where to get started. And I have some pinned posts at the top that show where to get started, what we specialize in, some different areas that we work in, and what that looks like, different packages, things like that. And then there's another pinned post on Meet the Team where you get to learn more about myself and my whole team as well and all of our credentials. So that's a great place to get started. My website also has a lot of information. I have a blog, I have YouTube, I have podcast interviews. I have a lot on my website as well. And it's the same as kristenblakewellness.com. And through either my Instagram or my website, you can click on learn more about working with us. And I like to start with a discovery call where I sit down and I meet everyone and see what is going on, what are your goals, how long has it been going on, what do I think might have led you to where you are now? And that really helps me lay out for them on that call. What do I think this work will entail for you? And how long do I think it's going to take? And what kinds of tests do I think will be helpful? Because I don't do a one size fits all where everybody that comes in gets this test and does this diet or that diet. Everything is customized. So I want to meet you and talk to you. And from there, I can help you understand, what I think might be most helpful. And then you get to decide on that call or after. If that sounds good and it's something you want to do or not, but you'll know upfront prior to working with us what exactly that's going to look like. So you're able to book a discovery call with me either through my website or through my link in my bio and my Instagram, and then we can meet, talk through it, and see, how do I think I could help you. We have a variety of packages ranging from just a testing package. So if somebody has one issue, this is great. So if somebody comes in, they're like, I just have the worst PMS ever. Great, let's run a Dutch hormone test and let's have an appointment to tell you all about it. And we'll tell you what to eat and what to do and everything, and you're on your way. Or if you just have IBS and that's it, great, we're going to do a stool test. We're going to see exactly what's going on in there, take out all the stuff that's in the way, put in what you need, and then you're on your way. For bigger, more long-standing, complicated issues, we'll do something that's more involved where we're over the course of multiple months, we're meeting multiple times or running multiple tests, things like that. So we have a lot of different ways to work with us that we can chat through on the discovery call as well.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And that makes so much sense to have those different packages because some people do just need something pretty quick, and other people it's going to take more time to resolve an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people if you've had an issue going on for multiple years, that's probably how many months it's going to take to resolve it. So if someone's had 2 years of diarrhea and IBS, you can probably fix that in 2 to 3 months. If you've had 20 years of extreme fatigue and anemia with no known cause and heavy periods and all of these things, that's going to maybe take 20 months if you've had it for 20 years. So that's a very rough estimate, but it kind of helps people wrap their brain around what they're in for as far as like their health journey. Like my journey that I had to go on with Lyme and all the things was a year to 2 years. I went hard. I really expedited that, but it could have been longer probably. So I worked really hard for that time frame. But then now I get to just maintain and coast, like I said, and just do practices that I learned are right for me and my body. And we like to teach our clients that as well of how they can maintain their new health without needing us long term, but learning more about their body and what it needs and how to help it function best.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Well, thank you for coming on here and talking to us about this and providing so much information about like multiple different issues, but I think they all really relate to each other and they're all about our health, our gut health at its core in so many ways. And thank you for the work that you're doing because you're really shaping the next generation and helping mothers and their families to be healthier. And that's so important.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for having me. Really enjoyed it.